GPT-5, let's talk about it. I think there's been quite the debate online about how people feel about the GPT-5 models. Um, from what I gather, the vast majority of people feel the way you see you see in the meme, which is on the screen, and that's that the models didn't live up to their expectations. In this particular video, I'm not here to combat that. I'm just here to give sort of my own view as to what I found useful about these models, and then also we'll get into a bit of how I go into investigation of the models when I actually see a new model. So in my particular case, when I find a brand new model, the first thing that I do is that I run it against this particular um not that one, this particular prompt, which is that give me a 3D simulation of ants using Three.js, HTML, and Tailwind. The ants need to be moving different resources to their home, and ants must be in a grass field. The grass must be animated well with lighting. Do not reference folders outside of the folder you are working in. And this is pretty much just to, the last bit is just to make sure that the model doesn't cheat and look at someone else's work and then come up with something, because I'm working with multiple models within the same folder. Um, the reason as to why I use this particular prompt is because Three.js is not exactly easy to implement. Even things as easy as getting the right link to the CDN is quite complex. Of course, that's become better as the models have started to improve. Um, but I really want to see, how does it handle the complexity of all these different things, including the design, including the instruction following, including everything else that comes with it, right? So this is basically my go-to prompt that I use in a new model. Now, I'm going to show you what the different models give in this particular case. So I've run this test fresh right now, but let's just see how the models perform. So this is Gemini 2.5 Pro, and you can see that it does have everything. You have the ants, you have the ant hill, you have the resources. And I would say that for like a zero shot, you know, prompt, and actually we're going to discuss that in just a bit, because the three things that you're really going to see in terms of like the difference between the frontier models that we have right now, which is in my particular tests, Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Sonnet, and then GPT-5 in this particular, setup, is that there's going to be a difference between the back and forth, which is the number of errors you're going to get. There's going to be a difference in the number of um, the actual output actually that you're going to get, um, and a difference in the speed. So when it comes to the first one, how did Gemini 2.5 Pro do in regards to being able to pull this off? How many back and forths did we have? So this is the one for Gemini. This is the one for GPT-5. This is Gemini 2.5 Pro. And you see, we only had one error, which is basically, telling it that it hadn't, like, it couldn't find the main.js file, which I think was a bit sloppy because no other model actually had this problem, but, it's okay. We literally just had to do one pass to get this output. And for, just for one error, I think this is pretty good. Of course, you're going to go ahead and you're going to refine it, but just for the start, this is good. The only place that I would pick on is like the logic. Now, you notice that all the ants are moving towards the exact same resource, and once the first ant makes it back to the ant hill, the resource disappears. So this is a bit of a problem in like the logic that it's actually implementing, whereby it's making all the ants, pick the same food and returning it to the anthill. So with the exact same prompt, let's see how Claude did. Now, this is Claude's implementation, and you can see straight away it's much more cleaner. It has all the things that we asked for. It has the ants, it has the resources, but again, if we're picking when it comes to logic, you notice that every ant that has returned with a resource is actually living with the exact same resource. So resources are not actually being dropped off on the anthill. But in terms of like how it looks like, it looks really good. And you have all these different commands that have been added as well, including you can add ants, you can add resources that are randomly put on the map. You can also pause, you can also play, and you can reset. And this is nice. So you also have this information counter here at the top in the corner, which I think is really good. So no complaints. The only complaint is basically the actual on the actual logic that was implemented. And if you're really being picky, I would say that if you zoom in, you can notice that, like the output is not like high, like HD or anything like that. But I think it's okay. Like you're obviously going to iterate more on this, so it's fine. So how does GPT-5 do? And this is GPT-5's output. Now, given that the Claude 4 Sonnet actually, the Claude 4 Sonnet model didn't actually have any errors in its code, that was really impressive. It just put out 560 lines and it basically worked out of the box. Now, this is GPT-5. GPT-5 had one error as we were actually making it, and this is the output. Now, compared to the others, where it really shines is that you can see that the output is high quality. Of course, the insects themselves don't look the best, and I won't fault it because even the Claude model didn't have the best looking insect, so that's fine. But you can see that the difference is in the logic. The logic whereby each insect is basically carrying one particular resource, it dumps it at the actual place where it needs to be, and it goes back out to get another one. And this is where I have actually found the strengths of GPT-5 to be over testing it over the last week, which is that it performs really well in front end tasks and it performs really well in instruction following. Um, and of course, I don't think it's like an outright replacement for Claude for Sonnet, but in the past, I couldn't get myself to use O3 or any ChatGPT model extensively when it comes to implementing things um, because of the issues that it had, with instruction following. Now, O3 was really good. It's just that it was a bit slow and it basically didn't live up to Sonnet. I would say that with GPT-5, it is much closer to Claude for Sonnet than anything else. And it really, like some of the outputs that it has in terms of like the front end design, really, really look good. To the point that I have sort of moved over to GPT-5 for like my front end tasks. And I've sort of been using it also in the instruction following to some extent, but I haven't felt the need to reach for a Sonnet in the case that I do, um, as much as I thought I would need to. So that's kind of like where I find that it's quite impressive. And again, all of these models shine in different scenarios. I feel like using them interchangeably is where it really shines. But if you are going to use this in like your deployment or your actual like production environments, two things to keep note of obviously is that GPT-5 I think is quite cheaper than the other two in terms of like the cost. And I'm going to put a star against that because these are like the figures I'm getting from the top of my head. And then the other thing is that when you go into the thinking mode, GPT-5 outputs quite a lot of tokens. And in fact, I would say that GPT-5 was the slowest out of the three models to give this particular output. But you could say that, the quality or the output that you get kind of is okay. That's a trade-off that you get. But again, like the beauty is you can always shrink down the thinking or increase the thinking based on your budget, which I think is a really good thing. So I don't know. I do kind of like wonder to some extent the reason as to why it has so much backlash online. I have a feeling it might be from users who might not be using it for coding specifically, but even for people who might be using it for coding, um, I think the fact that the model follows instructions so well might be the reason as to why it's kind of falling behind people's expectations. I think Sonnet does a really good job of filling in the blank space of what you want to do, and maybe people have gotten used to that. So I don't know, but I feel like GPT-5 still has its own place where it shines in this entire, model ecosystem. But those are my thoughts. I've been using it extensively. I've been quite impressed with how it does with front end, and I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments if there's any particular formats that you're using, any sort of prompting. Have you tried it? What do you think about it? I think it's okay to have a differing opinion, but this is just what I've seen over the last week, right? Um, so yeah, that's my humble opinion on GPT-5, and I'll catch you in the next one.